Welcome to a new episode of Outside the Panels with your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes.
Welcome everyone to an episode of Outside the Panels. I am your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes, and joining me this time around at the start of something epic on the indie book scene is a gentleman from Homebrewed Comics. I'm talking to Mr. Chris Sahloff. Chris, thank you very much for taking the time. How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm very well. I've got to give kudos straight away. I'll say Chris is such a nice guy that I had to reschedule our original appointment, and Chris was flexible enough to let me do that. So, Chris, thank you for that.
No problem.
I owe you one, dude. I owe you one. Right.
Have me on.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Welcome. We love indie books. We love small press books over on Comic Crusaders and the Undercover Capes podcast network. So let's get into it. Let's dive straight into it. What's Homebrewed Comics? What's the 411?
So Homebrewed Comics came about because our book Crit is based on a homebrewed Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And so the LLC is actually Homebrewed Heroes, but for the comics portion of it, we use Homebrewed Comics. And right now, our only title out right now is Crit. But I just announced last night that on this Kickstarter we have going right now, part of the stretch goal is 4 pages added into the end of Crit of our next book, which is called Mr. Wizard and Friends, which is another D&D campaign that we have. And that game exists as like pop culture in Crit. Okay. So it's a book within a book kind of thing.
All right. So quite meta in its own way.
Right. And we do have a couple more series that will come out, short series. Crit will be the longest running series we have. Mm-hmm. We have some side books that exist within the same universe, but it's all closed off in our own little D&D world. All
right. Okay. So crossover between characters, kind of, but nothing major, nothing like a certain 2 universes.
No. No major crossovers like that. So you won't see. So the characters all exist in the same universe, but they operate kind of separate, right? So when you launch, you won't see Crit in Mr. Wizard and Friends. You'll see Mr. Wizard and Friends show up on maybe a TV or something within the Crit books, or they might mention something that happened, but the characters are fake in their world. They may run across the actor that plays one of those characters, which would be funny, but they're not going to interact in a way where they're like a team up or anything like that.
Okay, cool. So it's kind of like a coexistence rather than a mash together.
Right.
Got it. Cool. So would you say that you're more of a Dungeons and Dragons fan, like a D&D type thing, or a comics fan? Or is it both hold equally? Are you in this sort of mental battle every time? Comics or cards?
I was a comic fan first, and then in about 2010, the guys that play this game, I'm the dungeon master, they got me into D&D. And like the first time that I played, I remember saying to myself, I was like, this is, I'm a nerd. Don't get me wrong. I'll play video games. I go to conventions. I'd already been to a Comic-Con a few times. And I was like, I can do the nerd thing, but Dungeons and Dragons is like uber nerd, Mind you, at the time I worked at GameStop. And so I was already like borderline uber nerd.
Yeah.
So we'd all worked together. And so I said, hey, you know what? Screw it. I had just moved into the town with everybody. Work had moved me there. And I said, screw it. I'll play D&D and see what it's about. And the first few sessions we played, I didn't really enjoy it because the guy that was running the game just kind of took a lot of the fun out of it.
Yeah.
And then one of the guys was like, hey, like D&D is more fun than this. I'll run a game and you'll enjoy it.
Okay, cool.
And we homebrewed a Mass Effect version because we were all fans of Mass Effect. So he was like, "Hey, we all like Mass Effect. I'll do this. That way, it's a familiar universe for you. It's really easy to get into."
Yeah.
And we played that game for 2 years. every Sunday night we were playing that game, pizza and D&D. That was
no football, no NFL, no baseball.
No, I actually don't. I might hang myself on this one, but I don't watch sports. I've played every sport. I've wrestled, football, baseball. I've lettered in a few of those in school, and so I play the sports. I like the sports, but I have a million things going on and paying attention. Like I'm the person. I'll watch UFC because I can watch a fighter, right? I can watch one guy. I can get behind one guy, but with a team. And I used to watch football. I watched football all the way through probably into my freshman year of high school. But then everyone started trading players on me. And it became really hard for me because I'm like, well, I like this player, but now he's on this team. And I didn't like this team because they beat my team. And so I stopped following teams. I do, however, I will watch the Olympics, and I will watch women's basketball from UConn. Because I'm from Connecticut originally, so I watch UConn basketball, and I do watch men's college basketball from Kentucky because my other half of my family's from Kentucky.
Okay, cool.
So
my brother feels your pain. My brother was a Niners fan back in the mid '80s and loved Ronnie Lott, and Jerry Rice. And when they got traded and they left and went to the Raiders, he was like, "What am I supposed to do?" He was like, "You end up being a Raiders fan. Me, I'm a Dolphins fan through and through. So there's only one thing that could happen that would make me not a Dolphins fan, but that's another podcast down the line." All right. So I mean, I haven't played a lot of D&D. I've got to be honest. I think I played a Star Wars version once, and I get when you're saying your original DM was kind of like a bit of a fun sponge, for a better word. I know what you mean. The guys I played with, they kind of used it to like try and put people down. So like instead of a super confident person like me, they end up saying, right, your character's like a 9-year-old boy. You're like, how's that happen?
Yeah.
There's no 9-year-old kids. Well, I suppose there is now, but back then there wasn't any 9-year-old kids in Star Wars. So it's just kind of bonkers. So comics first. What comics were you reading? What was your inspiration back then? Can you remember?
Well, the very first comic I read was Ninja Turtles.
Of course. Good shout.
Yep. Yeah. So as a kid, I still have it somewhere on my wall. I have probably I want to say it's like the second printing of that of their first novel, like graphic novel they did, all black,
the Laird Eastman stuff.
Blood. Yeah, back before when it was brutal, before the cartoon, and then I got into my first birthday cake was Batman. So I would say my oldest running fandom is definitely Batman. I remember my first birthday cake, my first like Halloween costume that I got to choose, those things. Like I always liked Batman. And to this day, I still am a huge Batman fan. If I could turn this around, I have a whole list of statues and things I've collected for years.
Lovely. Good old pointy ears.
My wedding band is my wife got me a white gold wedding band with Batman symbols in it. And in the center of every Batman symbol is a diamond. So like that's how my wife knows how much I love Batman too. So
an uber nerd with bling.
Exactly. And I got into Spawn when he came out, and X-Men, like Jim Lee, Chris Claremont, X-Men time period. Absolutely loved that time in comics. And then I got into Spawn, and that continued probably till into high school. Out of high school, I actually just started playing music. I was touring the country. I joined a couple different bands, and I played music for a long time. And at that time, I really wasn't into comic books. I didn't have any money. I actually was homeless for like a whole year, living out of my car. So I didn't have money to eat, let alone, buy comic books. And I tried to get back into it a few years ago, and I picked up Batman, X-Men. I just started collecting some books again, right around the time of like New 52.
All right.
And I was very lost.
Yeah.
Just what are some of these stories? Batman and Wonder Woman are together now. What is this? Oh, Superman and Wonder Woman are together. Yeah. Oh wait, which timeline am I in?
Yeah.
And it was really confusing. And somebody had told me to check out Invincible.
Yes,
because it was a solid story. And then the guys that I played D&D with actually told me, they were like, the reason we don't read comics is because of that. Pick up manga. Like, it's one story. You don't have to worry about it. And then I started reading like I watched Dragon Ball Z. I wasn't a big fan of it. I really enjoy Vampire Hunter D.
Yeah, good call.
Anime manga transitions. And then indie comics. I started getting into some heavy indie books.
Cool.
And the thing I enjoy about those is I get one story.
yeah, true. The fact that indie comics, a lot of them use the Dark Horse model, or what I call the Dark Horse model, where you get a mini series of 4 issues or 5 issues. That's it, done. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And then you're done for about a year, and then it comes back for the next volume. It's not a continuous. It's not a continuous drudge. That's what I want to say. And because it's not continuous, you don't have to put up with the bad issues. You just get the ones that because they put all the effort into making the 4 issues really good. Excellent. So, should we take a look at Crit? Should we have a look at see what we're talking about? Let me just get some share screen going on, and we can have a look. I think I have this issue. It's Righteous Indignation. Is that the right one?
The first issue. Yep.
Boom. There you go. Check that out. So, some inspirations on here. What is that? Some dude in a hat. Is that some Alice in Wonderland going on there?
Perfect. I am so glad that you're like the first person to pick up on Samedi and my obsession with Alice in Wonderland. So, on the screen here, those are my main characters, and they're all based off of the players. So the guy with the glowing hand, that's Spectre. My buddy Austin plays him. The guy in the red with the guns, that's Caliber. Brad is him. The guy, the punchy guy with the beard, that is Terrell. So that's Boulder. And then you have Reach kind of floating up there. The cat was Spectre, the glowy purple guy. He is a warlock base in D&D, and he wanted a familiar. And he kept trying to, if you've played D&D, especially when you're homebrewing a campaign, you have those guys that love to kind of push the envelope and see how far they can get. In real life, he's allergic to cats. So, as a punishment, everything he kept going back and forth on in the game, so his punishment was his familiar was a cat. And after 4 hours of this cat being around him, he suffered negative, so he was exhausted 1 level. For every 4 hours, that cat was out. And that was my limiting factor for having the cat. But I got to be the cat, and I based the personality of him off of the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, mixed with a little bit of the Mad Hatter, mixed with a little bit of Cat in the Hat.
Okay, cool.
So you get like this cat who loves to rhyme. He doesn't need to, but he likes to. And he loves to just answer everything in the most sarcastic, kind of underhanded tone, because he's not, of this world, and he knows more than what he leads on to, but he doesn't think that this team of ragtag guys is really going to be able to accomplish what he knows they need to. And really in the back of his head, he's like, if I tell them everything, they're going to screw it up. So I just need to let them go along, and I'll give them some hints and guide them. But, he gets so frustrated too, because there's points in the series where he breaks character. So he won't be rhyming. He'll yell at Spectre, because Spectre's the only one who can hear him. And Spectre's like, you don't have to rhyme. And he's like, damn it.
So he's a bit of a fussy pussy.
Yes, and
he's alcoholic
too. So I don't know. Did I send you book 4?
Yes, chance? I've got 4. I'm going to show it in a little bit.
So book 4 has a cover of him, and he's drunk. The cat is slumped over, drunk in a corner.
Okay, that's cool.
And I actually have him right here. He was part of book 4. I got a stuffed animal made of him. And he's available in the current Kickstarter we have as well.
All right, excellent, cool, excellent. So. How do your friends feel now that they're immortalized in comic bookdom?
At first, they were really tired of me dragging them in to read the books and promote the books and talk about them and work on them. I didn't think that I don't think at first they were as interested as I was in the journey. And we just did an interview, which I posted on our YouTube channel, with all of them, because it's really hard for me to get all 6 guys together.
Okay. Add the cat from somewhere.
Yeah, well, the cat somewhere. He's an annoyance. But they've really grown to appreciate it, mainly because of the reception that the series has had. We launched our Kickstarter last night, and we funded in 26 minutes. We did almost $2,000 in 26 minutes, which was amazing. And I think we're about to break 50 backers day one on that campaign.
Yep.
So a bunch of guys sitting around playing D&D, and now all of a sudden we have a bunch of people interested in what we do at the table. And I think that they started seeing that aspect of it, that, it was bigger than just us getting together and playing D&D. And now they have a lot more respect for the comic book and where I want to go with the series.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. Talk about your Kickstarter. I just have that to hand. Give me 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Or a cat's tail even. Boom. And there we go. There's your Kickstarter. Check that
That's
out.
actually the other one. That's 4.
Sorry, apologize.
You're good. You're good. Yeah, we've done quite a few of these. So
there's the cat half cut on whatever it is.
There's the Kickstarter we did for book 4, which did very well as well. 126 backers.
Okay, that's fine.
Click on my name, we could probably get right to it.
Let's have a look.
Yep. Go to the 4 created, and it should pull up my last one that we did.
4 created by. I apologize.
You're good.
This top one.
Yep. Intestinal Fortitude.
There you go. That's the stuff that Bret Hart used to have, wasn't it?
Yeah. We're at 47, so we got another backer in the next since I checked earlier this afternoon.
There you go. So while that's in, this is in. I can change this to dollars for everybody. So this is $2,228 pledged of a $1,500 goal. That's absolutely fantastic. Well done, man.
Yeah, I'm very happy with all of the showing just so far. We've already done more than half of what we did in an entire campaign last time in one day. Cool. So, this is big. I didn't expect it like that much. You always have a certain expectation going to Kickstarter. Like, yeah, I know these people are going to show up. I feel like this, and I really thought we'd end day one around 700, maybe half goal 750.
Yeah.
And we broke that in less than 5 minutes. And I was astounded. I did a live launch last night on our Instagram page, and I had some of our friends kind of pop in, and they were watching it as I'm talking. And they're like, Chris, you're almost at $1,000. Oh my God. Yeah. 26 minutes in, we broke the 1,500, and within another 10 minutes, we were almost at $2,000. And, we're just blessed. I think, though, it really shows that people enjoy the story and the concept. Traditionally, comic books are written with a plot and a story and a driving force. And our book is based off of the world is reacting to what my players do. If you've played D&D, we don't have a set module. This isn't like we're playing Stroud or anything like that. This is all off the cuff at the table. This is where our story is going. And I had an idea when we first started about where I wanted this story to go.
Right.
And just like any DM, the first chapter was, this is really the 6th game we played is what you're being able to read here. Right here is where I realized I can't control the narrative in here.
Right.
The first 4 to 5 game sessions, I had 6 to 7 hours worth of planning beforehand, maps drawn out. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. And they just kept going left, right. They would not go anywhere I wanted them to go. And
especially using 20-sided dice, man. Just use a 6-sided dice. Control the options, man. Control the options.
So hard. And I was like, I want them to have fun, but I want them to do what I want them to do.
Have fun, but turn left.
Right. We would be in the middle of a game, and I would have to stop because I'm like, well, I didn't anticipate that. And I remember calling Brad and saying, man, like, we're enjoying this, but I feel like how do I become a better DM for you guys? And this was after the last session. And right before this session happened, I was talking to him and he said, Chris, have a list of things that you want to have happen. He said, don't have a plan for when they happen. Just make sure they do happen.
Yeah.
And then roll a die when we do something stupid and have it happen. He's like, but just set the stage. Give us, this is the situation. This is what's going on. And have things like built that we can interact with, but don't spend all your time building the story. Let us build the story.
Yeah.
And so we went into this this session, which is called Intestinal Fortitude. And I just said, hey guys, because they left the last session, they were driving off to, challenge the big corporation that was doing the illegal experiments. Like, oh, we're going to go take them on. I said, okay, well, I'm going to build this highly fortified base because that's what would be there. And I said, okay, so you're in the van. We're starting the game off. And I say, all right, you're in your van, you're driving, and you're almost at this facility. Your tech guy, OB Reach, he channels in and he says, hey, this is what you're up against. They have, there's a guard shack with guards in it. They have, there's a rotary gun. Like all this crazy stuff, I'm listing it. And they're like, well, yeah, we're going to drive full force up to the gate, and then we're going to jump out with our hands up in the air, screaming as loud as we can and distract them. And so I rolled to see how the guards would react to that. And of course, the guards rolled terribly. So the guards come running out of the shack with their guns pulled on them, and they make some terrible jokes towards the guards now with guns pulled on them. And then they distract them even more with one of the characters pretending to be sick, rolling on the ground saying, if the cream is sour, do not devour. And he kept saying that over and over again, and we were dying laughing. And I didn't plan for any of this. I just built little things, and I let them really drive the narrative, and I just kept reacting to what they were doing.
Cool.
And at the end of it, we all agreed for until recently when we've just been really enjoying some of the story that's been going on. But we always go back to this session, no matter how much fun we have. This is the first session where everyone really feels like they're in their own.
Cool.
And, for D&D too, it's like by your fifth or sixth game, you're usually coming into the character, right?
Yeah.
And on this game, it really clicked for everybody. They just really role played their characters well. The combat went really, really smoothly. And so I've been looking forward to putting this book out since I put out the first issue in 2020. So
let me ask you a question then, because I am a bit of a D&D novice, I have to say. So when you're DMing and you're facilitating the quest and you're letting them do whatever there is doing with the key points you need to indicate, in the back of your mind, are you part writer at this point, thinking, man, that was really good, I need to put that in the book. Man, that was really good, I need to put that in the book. Man, that makes no sense, I can't put that in the book. How's that kind of...
So I record all of our sessions.
All right, okay.
So I have
sign disclaimers for that, is that right?
Was that?
Do they sign disclaimers for that? What happens on the quest stays on the quest.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a reason I don't release them, because you get a bunch of guys around the table. Some of them, there was a short period of time where one of my guys was on painkillers because he had surgery on his arm. And some of the stuff that came out of his mouth, I mean, he was just belligerent sometimes with his painkillers. And he's not a guy that cusses a lot. So I was like, man, dude, you're brutal. So I don't release the raw footage just because that's close to us. That's our game time.
Yeah.
But I do go through and I try to find the pieces that don't belong. We do like to keep as much from the table on there as possible. So what I remove is the things that I try to introduce that are fun and they don't care about. Like the underground city with all these cool beings with powers like them. Nope. They went there once and then they closed the door and they said, we're never going back there again. And
you're like, damn, I've spent 5 hours building this city, writing the characters, and you've thrown me under the bus, man.
I had the map of the city made. I had certain characters in there that they would interact with. I had an entire quest line for that and more quest lines they could pick up and go to. There was merchants. There was everything, and it was a city within a city. I spent a month working on this thing, and they go in. They literally spend 5 minutes of the campaign in there, and they're like, "This is stupid. We're leaving." I was like, "What do you mean stupid?" And they're like, "We want to be the only superheroes. Like, what is this?" And so I removed something like that because, as a reader, I'm a huge fan of sci-fi, like Star Wars, you name it. Like, I'm a huge nerd when it comes to stuff. You can see my Star Wars books that I've got over here.
Oh, look at you! Check it out. Yeah.
There's nothing worse for a reader to have a hint of something and then never have a payoff, right?
Yeah. Totally.
So I remove things that have zero payoff in our campaign because I don't want to have loose ends. We know where the story is going to end because we've been playing this game for 3 years, and we're close to 30 sessions in. So we've already got like 30 of these books written, and I've already planned where they're going. Like I've already figured out my end game in the series.
Okay. Cool.
Now how they get there is up to them, but and it will change. I know I have a flow. I just know, hey, I know there's some stuff that's gonna trigger, and then this is gonna happen, and we'll get here. But I'm anticipating a 40-book run on the series.
Okay. Cool.
And
all Kickstarter.
Unless somebody picks me up and can fund some of this stuff, because I have. If you read book one, all right, I learned how to draw while doing this book. All right,
I like book one. I like. Don't say this the wrong way. I'm going to say this, and you're going to shoot.
You can't say anything the wrong way. Go ahead.
I like the rawness of book one. I like how, it's not the polished article. It's a world in progress, and I like that. I get to see the polished article more times than not. Right? As much as I like it, like just same as you, I love Batman and the bats and everything. You know what? That's just a little bit too twee sometimes. I want to go back. I want to see something that's fresh, that's different, that's starting out. To recapture some of that love that we had for comics when we first started reading them in the first place, right? And not everything's going to be perfect, and that's what's great about it. The fact that it isn't perfect, the fact that you think, oh well, and then the next issue you see improvements, and then the next issue, and so on and so forth. And that's, for me, part of the enjoyment of reading indie books.
And that's really so people ask me, well, where's your character in the book? My character is the artist.
Yeah.
You get to see the characters level up and gain new powers. My new abilities are, hey, that I can do shading on this style, or I can add this. And I'm really proud of the fact that every book is a little better than the last. Perfect. People have asked me, do you want to redo book one? And I actually struggled at one point. As an artist, you look at your work and I'm like, I could do that better.
Yeah.
But I remember that was the best I could do at that point in time.
Perfect. Spot on. Absolutely, you get that.
We go to Kickstarter with these books so I can really pay the colorist and I can pay for the cover art, because I've got some phenomenal artists on the covers, and I've got a phenomenal colorist that has come in and really helped me out. And, I've got people from all over the world contributing to the art of this book. And I mean, we don't draw a dime, right? Like everything goes back into the next book every single time.
Yeah. And
so, going to Kickstarter is really funding the artists that come on and help me out. And if I'm going to ask people to spend $7, $10, $20, we have a tier for $150, right?
Right.
If I'm going to ask you to put your hard-earned money into our story, you're going to get the very best that I can do in this moment in time. So every book is like this snapshot of my very best work.
See, I absolutely, totally love that. That is absolutely so honest. I'm a bit of a doodler. I like to draw, and I've got sketch pads all over the place, right? I don't throw them out. It drives my wife bonkers. She's like, why you kept this book? I said, because on that page, I like how I draw that hand. I like that page, I like how her face looks. That one, that's the first time I've drawn a woman in proportion. All these things I just use, and I keep, retooling and going back. And you know what? It's great to hear some like a professional such as yourself do that sort of thing. You know, it gives us amateurs something to think, hey, you know what? We're not on the wrong lines there. Right. Before we go any further, we'll take a quick advert for one of our shows. We're talking comics. We're talking Dungeons and Dragons. Well, to me, seems like there's only one advert for that. Check out the Jank Think Tank. Check out Josh and Matthew as they slam their decks all over the place. I have no idea what that means. I'm not much together, so hopefully somebody gets it. The Jank Think Tank on the UCPN, everything that's Magic the Gathering, deck reveals, pack openings, and of course some gameplay with some explanations for us newbies like me. There you go. What can I say? Right, so back to Crit. I think, you know what? Are we okay to show issue 4? A little bit of issue 4?
Yeah, show it.
Yeah. Let me get some going then, because the and there we go. There is issue 4. Check that cover out. Look at a bit of the intergalactic ninja type element thing going on there. If anyone remembers that book from God knows when. Right. So who's this dude?
So that's Bones. This was the first book with him in it, actually. His introduction.
Okay. Good guy, bad guy? I'm thinking bad guy. He's got school boards on his...
He's he's introduced as a bad guy. Crit actually goes to fight him thinking that he's a supervillain when really he's actually a super victim.
Okay.
And they find that out. It takes them a little while to figure out what's going on. In fact, in the end of 4, they still question who this big giant dude is because he's 7 foot tall he's massive. He has a sword and a shield that he calls upon like ethereally, and he wreaks havoc on the team because he is our tank / healer in the group. There you go, the current cat right there.
Oh, I should go get my cat. You'd be like, where?
He loves the cigars. He loves his rum.
No, who doesn't, right?
Exactly.
Looking fancy in his hat. Look at him.
Yeah, I still to this day people ask me like, who's your favorite character, and I said just the cat. Like,
yeah, cat.
You can't go wrong with a drunk smoking cat, right?
Oh man, I love his little toe beans on his feet.
Oh,
the pads. Yeah, that's really cool.
Robert Nix did this, and Robert Nix does in book 5. We have a cover with Caliber holding Boulder in his arms, and Boulder's holding his stomach with a bunch of taco wrappers around him, and the whole place is on fire. Robert he also did the faces here for me. Very talented. He is doing the interior artwork on Mr. Wizard and Friends for us as well. Cool. So, yeah, this was before you get to see the team unmasked for the first time because they do have day jobs. Their day job is working for this big tech company called Technetic, who is half the reason, actually the main reason they have superpowers to begin with. And their CEO is trying to market, superheroes and make money off of them. The problem is they're not really being superheroes. They're more like super vigilantes.
Oh, okay.
And so he's trying to get them to do good things, not just shoot the enemy, arrest them, work with the police officers. Let's try and not shoot the bad guy in the head. That's bad for public image, right?
Question first, shoot in the head second, right?
Exactly. And in book 1, Caliber looks at him and they're arguing. And he goes, so do you think that shooting him in the head was the best course of action? And Caliber's like, well, isn't that how you kill people?
Maybe that's an opening gambit. No.
And all of that happened really in game because I was, as the DM, trying to get them to play superheroes.
Right.
And they were actively fighting against me, except Boulder. Boulder really wanted to be a superhero. The rest of the team was like, why do we want to be heroes?
Yeah.
We have powers. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah. We go get tackled.
Sad because I literally pitched this game to them as, if you had superpowers, what would you do? And so now I'm very scared if they ever do get superpowers that my friends will actually become villains. I have to fight them on their moral compass.
Yeah,
but
be knocking on your door. Chris, screw you. I can fire laser bolts.
Exactly. They'll show up my front door and blast me. But so this is actually my favorite page of the book. And if you read that top line where it says insert song, we were coming up with the dialogue and everything for the book. And we had talked about the theme music, and Caliber is all about theme music for everything. In book 3 he has it, in book 4 he has it, even in book 5 he's going to have theme music for everything. He always pulls his phone out for some kind of theme. And they wanted some kind of Kenny Loggins song to ride into battle on, and they couldn't agree on a song. So when we were doing the dialogue, we were like, do we have the argument? Well, the argument creates another 2 pages. Let's not run the reader dry on a joke. So we just put insert song there until we could figure it out. And there was different dialogue here originally, but we just put insert song at first. And then we came back and we were working on some of the dialogue, and I read the line insert song a couple times. And I was like, oh my God, I was dying laughing. I was like, this is funny. So we reworked some of the dialogue in here so they could talk about insert song.
Yeah.
And it gives the reader a chance to put their favorite song there.
Yeah.
And, it worked out in 2 different ways. One, we just found it absolutely hilarious. And then 2, it really allows the reader to be a little bit more immersed into the story because now they can put their own song there that maybe they're familiar with.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, I don't even know what Mr. Jones is. With age, you'll learn to appreciate Mr. Jones.
Exactly.
Mr. Jones. Well, I like Counting Crows as much as the next guy, but I think Mr. Jones isn't the greatest amount of things. But there you go.
We did a poll online to see whose favorite, like what everyone's favorite Kenny Loggins song was.
Yeah. Danger Zone. It's got to be Danger Zone, right?
Well, Danger Zone was pretty popular.
It's got to be
but
Danger
people
Zone.
would put so many different Kenny Loggins songs in there. And, at the core of Crit is like a 90s flick, right?
Right.
Like we are all 90s kids, except for Austin. He's a 2000s kid. He's the youngest one in the group. But the rest of us, we grew up in that 90s time period to where if you're watching an action movie, you had Kenny Loggins in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Every 90s movie had Kenny.
Yeah.
So that's where we were kind of like conflicted. And that's why Austin he's like, I don't even know what that song is. Because, he's like 10 years younger than the rest of us. And he's like, I don't even know what that is.
Whoa. Yeah, cool. Excellent. Which do you find... All right, so I'm going to ask you a question in 2 ways then, right? Okay. Which do you find the most difficult? Do you find the plotting of the page and the art, or do you find the writing more difficult? And then as the flip of that question, which is the most satisfying?
I would say the most difficult is plotting the page. And that's because I have so many different characters in a page at once.
Right. Okay.
And balancing that is hard. So when I first started doing the comics, I knew there were people that were better at doing team books and people that were better at doing individual books. I read up on who's the best writer of team comic books.
John Byrne.
And what?
John Byrne.
John who? I'm sorry.
John Byrne? No?
Oh yeah. Well, I won't lie. I watched a whole bunch of behind the scenes with Chris Claremont because
Chris Claremont's run. I've interviewed Chris Claremont.
He's probably one of my biggest inspirations for the story because he has a very cinematic approach to everything.
Yeah.
And
he plays for the long game as well.
Exactly. And with D&D, you have to have this long game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I watched a lot of stuff with him, and I have the utmost respect and admiration for Todd McFarlane because of his dedication to his craft.
McFarlane's I'm not going to diss his art because his art's gorgeous, but as good as his art is, he's a better business person by far.
Oh, and actually, it's funny. In our group of friends, everyone calls me Mini Todd.
Mini Mac.
Yeah, so when I first started this journey, and if my wife were around, she would tell you, if I do something, I am very immersed into what I'm doing.
Okay.
And I had a 12-hour drive home to Connecticut one weekend. And on the ride there, I just watched every Todd McFarlane video I could.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched a lot of the Image Comics videos because I grew up when Image hit, right? When I got into comic books really hard was when Image was coming out. And I remember that revolution they had started. And I was like, well, why can't we do something like that? Like I want to take notes on what they did because I know enough creators now. I want to do something like that. It can't be, and I say this lightly, it can't be that hard, right?
Right.
It can't be that hard to get a group of creators to work together for the same goal. And so I watched 12 hours worth of videos on the way up there. And then I rewatched a lot of them on the way back as well. And when I came home, I had this idea for what we call now, we have a group called the Savage Sandbox, which is a bunch of creators, and we have distribution through that channel. Mm-hmm. So we have our own publishing rights on Kickstarter and our websites. But for retail, we have a bigger group. That way, we can get into stores. A lot of indie creators don't realize comic book stores don't care about one title. Comic book stores want, shelf space filled. They want books moved. And what better way to do that than to get a group of 7 or 8 guys working together for the same cause? And so I used that, and I got us some distribution, and then now I've got, I've gone into the collector cards, and then I've got the stuffed animals now, and the guys are always like, well, what are you doing next? Because I want to figure out how to do that,
Yeah. Cool.
I think that's one of the coolest things they've said is that I'm like a mini Todd. I have a good business sense.
Okay.
I've been in sales since I was like 17, and I've run like 4 different companies. So I know a lot about business.
Uh-huh.
It was the art stuff that was harder for me.
Okay.
So, when we go to the book, really laying out the panels and getting the panels together is tougher because I really want to drive home my art style, and I want to be able to showcase properly on the page. But I don't want every page to have this, and it's a struggle, as an artist. You're like, do I have every page that's just absolute epic?
Yeah.
So
but sometimes some pages are just transition pages, right?
Exactly.
To get you from point A to point B. It doesn't need to be, whoa, look how grand the world is. It needs to be get the character from the car to the office.
Exactly. Whoa. It's like there's 3 rectangular panels or there's 6 square panels. You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
It's plain because we're just getting you from point A to point B right now. But we got to fill that gap with some info. And you don't need to have these, big explosions and everything. It's just a dude running, talking to a person. It's very simple. So let's just keep the panel simple and move forward. And then I realized as I was doing that how much more impact those bigger pages had when I took it away from everyone.
Yeah, it's like the West Wing. And if anyone watches the West Wing, they do like a huge ton of dialogue, just walking from place to place. But then when they sit down and they're in like the room or they're having a big meeting, that's when it becomes like, wow, this is really serious. That's
exactly
the thing. Yeah.
And I like to use the art to drive a lot of that home. The dialogue and writing the dialogue is much easier than one would think because I have it recorded. So
your friends copyright it.
Right. I literally,
I'm going to call you something. Do not put this in your book.
I'll get that too. Or they'll be like, oh, hold on. Let me redo that because I can do it better. But what I do is when I'm drawing, so as I'm planning the pages out, and I do about 3 to 4 pages at a time.
Right.
I'll listen to that segment of the game and I'll put their dialogue in the sketch. So I'll write what they wrote. And I have an entire layer of just like the sketch with their sketch dialogue.
Right.
And then when we go to letter, I've got all those sketch pages and I'm like, okay, well, this is what was said. And we'll like refine it a little bit, because sometimes you're just at the table saying, yeah, I'm going to do this. Or I said this. And we beef up some of the text, or sometimes we omit some of the text.
I know what you mean by that. Okay.
Just like YouTube people love to edit videos, we do edit some of our texting. and then we'll do a full read through. So
Yeah.
me, Brad, and Terrell usually do the first read through just to make sure it makes sense and it sounds good. And then I'll bring it to everybody else, and they'll refine it a little bit. Like, especially Austin Spector, he has a very different way of talking than, say, Brad or myself. He's 10 years younger. So he even says, he's like, I have a lot more run-on sentences than you guys. You know, he has ADHD, so he's like, sometimes I might just say a squirrel moment, you know. And so he likes to add in his own flair. And at first it was tough because I'm like, man, I had to go back and redo this whole thing now. And after we had someone read the book, and they're like, wow, all these individual personalities really shine. I was like, oh, it's worth it. You know, it's worth the extra hour or two to go in and fix his dialogue if that means it's going to translate that well to a reader, for them to say he's my favorite character because of just how his personality is.
Perfect. So does that mean your buddies act like mini editors in a way?
Oh yeah, they're all listed as editors. They're all listed as writers. I don't take full credit on anything. The only thing I take credit on is the interior artwork, because you saw book 1. There is an unreleased book 0, which I'm putting in the trade paperback.
Good. That's a good call. I love it when extra stuff goes in trades.
There's like 40 of them out there somewhere that I did as a stretch goal on one of the campaigns very early on, so there's not very many of them. But the very first crit book was only supposed to be for the D&D players as like something fun. And what happened was I put months of work into this book, which, again, book 1 is about 10 times better than that book was. But I remember drawing for the first time in probably a decade and showing it to my wife. Preface this, my wife is an absolute phenomenal artist. Most of the paintings on my wall are done by her. She is just phenomenal. So she's looking through the book and she reads the whole thing, and she hands me my tablet and she goes, okay. And she turns the TV on. She's like, it was good. Or it was okay. Yeah. And that was it. No eye contact, nothing, looking straight at the TV. It's okay. And I've known my wife, we're going on 20 years that I've known her. We've been married for almost 6. I think when I did the comic book, we were like right at 4 years married. And so when my wife says it's okay, that's her way of saying, I know you can do better, but I'm not going to give you a hard time, kind of thing.
Oh, challenge thrown, gauntlet dropped. I don't think
she really thought that I was going to go anywhere with it.
All right, okay.
So the very next day, I grabbed I had just upgraded to an iPad. And I started with Procreate, and I said, what do you think of this? And she was like, do you want me to look at it? She's like, if you want my help, I'll give you help. And every panel, I will tell you this, from book 1 to book 2, every page, every panel, she was helping me with my depth to field ratio on people. She was angles on legs, how people look in different positions, because she's a photographer as well.
So camera angles, where's the spotlight coming down? Is it focusing down? Exactly. Is it looking them up? Is it if it's a shot where people are talking? If you change the angle a little bit to make it more interesting on the eye?
Exactly. She would look at things and go, Chris, his arm would be broken if it isn't in that position. Like, where's his elbow? Where's the? She would, and she still does this every once in a while. Book 4, end of book 3, beginning of book 4, she said, I think you reached the point where you really don't need my help anymore. And then in book 5, I drew something. She's like, it looks like his leg's broken. I'm like, yeah, he's like moving this. She's like, no. And how she does things can be frustrating to an artist. But I've put my ego on the back burner, and because of the talent that she does have.
Cool.
And so I'll copy my layer for her, and she'll just erase everything and resketch it. And I'm like, okay, I'll fix it. Yep. But at first it was tough. It was very tough for her to come in and erase my work and fix it. But then when I would see the final result, I'm like, okay, you know what? This isn't just about me, right? This isn't, I tried to also argue that hey, look at Rob Liefeld, like his proportions are not great, but this is someone who's never read any of his books, right? Has no idea who he is. I'm sitting with her one night, and she's looking through all this work that he's done. And she goes, Chris, she's like, you know, in the 90s, he did it this way. And this, you know, and she even said, she was like, it looks like he's not as good anymore. It's almost like he's, you know, kind of, you know, what I forgot the word she said, but
his own style.
Like, yeah, but she said his style is wrong, but that's his style. So she's like, so if you want your style to be wrong, then you're just going to be kind of copying him. Don't you want to do it right and have your style be right?
Yeah, it's a show.
She said, you're the very beginning. You can define your style now. Do you want to be a copy of the guy that everybody calls wrong? You know, even if he has fans.
Yeah, that's a show. Yeah,
like, and I'm not going to diss on the man. He's done a lot for comic. He's done his resume is huge, and he's done some great work. Youngblood is still one of my favorite Image books. But she was like, "Do you want to be Rob Liefeld light, or do you want to be Chris?" And I was
Chris
like,
every time, right?
I was like, "Yeah, I want to be me. You know, I want to do it right."
Yeah,
and so she said, "Well, then let me fix it."
Cool. Excellent.
And that really put in perspective, you know, the art style and stuff as we move forward. So, yeah, she's a godsend.
Right. Before I let you go, I think it's only fair that we play the video from your Kickstarter.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Is that okay for everybody?
Yeah, perfect.
Let me just get this going. I have to say, that doesn't sound like Kenny Loggins to me.
That song was actually written by a friend of mine. I messaged him when we started, and I said, "Hey, I don't want to fight, you know, legal stuff. Can you write a song for me?" And I don't know if you can see, but I have a whole bunch of guitar amps and stuff. I've been playing guitar since I was a kid. He's just way better than me.
There you go. That might be bigger pictures.
So I have a whole bunch of custom guitar work.
Cool. Excellent.
He has a whole studio, and I said, "Hey, could you write a really epic metal song for me?" And he was like, "Yeah, no problem. I got you." Yeah. And so, now we have this epic metal song. It's a 3-minute long song. I'm going to redo in the middle of the campaign. I'll probably release like a full 3-minute video with the whole song and more clips and stuff from the comics. But he's pretty epic. Cool. So we don't have to worry about legal stuff on that music.
So you've got writers, stroke editors playing the game.
Yep.
You've got video recorders. You've got band dudes bringing the music. Dude, you're set.
I know. So, side note, actually I was signed to Sony Records for a subsidiary of Sony. We had distribution through them and marketing and all this stuff. But yeah, we played like Warped Tour, and I did that for about 6 years. And our reunion / very final show is this year. We just it's been like 10 years since I played, so I really should probably practice. But
all right, there you go, Chris. Thank you so much for taking us through Homebrew. I really do appreciate it. Book looks great. The art looks great. Love the concept. Absolutely love the idea. Mixing Dungeons and Dragons, throwing in some comic books, hanging out with your homies as you're doing that. That sounds like such a great fun. I'm glad. I'm so pleased it's doing so well for you. And the results on the latest Kickstarter are just phenomenal. So well done. Well done. Right. Don't disappear at the end, Chris, because we'll do some crossing T's and dotting the I's. But for everyone else, don't forget to check out the UCPN for all your favorite shows, including the Jank Think Tank. Put my teeth back in to get that one in. And of course, my personal favorite, the Old Timers Comic Book Show, where the hosts aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. You never know, we might get around to talking about Rob Liefeld at some time. Never going to happen. All right. I've been joining the machine, Hughes. Chris, thanks very much. And for everyone else, adios.
Take care.
Visit undercovercapes.com for the latest and greatest podcasts via the Undercover Capes Podcast Network. Also visit our parent company website, comiccrusaders.shop, all about comic pop culture.